Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Stotra Shata Sri Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashtotara Shri Srimad Jai Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashtotara Shata Sri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Viranda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Goho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Ghora Bhakta Viranda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Canto 3, Chapter 13, Text 28. gṛṇato pṛthvyāḥ padavīm vijighran kroḍa-apadeśaḥ svayam adhvara aṅgaḥ daṁṣṭraḥ. Oh my. Karāla-daṁṣṭraḥ api akarāla-dṛgbhyām forgive me, udvīkṣya viprān gṛṇataḥ aviśat kam ghrāṇena pṛthvyāḥ padavīm vijighran ghrāṇena pṛthvyāḥ padavīm vijighran kroḍa-apadeśaḥ svayam adhvarāṅgaḥ kroḍa-apadeśaḥ svayam adhvarāṅgaḥ karāla-daṁṣṭro akarāla-dṛgbhyām karāla-daṁṣṭro akarāla-dṛgbhyām udvīkṣya viprān gṛṇato viśat udvīkṣya viprān gṛṇato viśat ghrāṇena pṛthvyāḥ padavīm vijighran kroḍa-apadeśaḥ svayam adhvarāṅgaḥ karāla-daṁṣṭro akarāla-dṛgbhyām udvīkṣya viprān gṛṇato viśat. Please repeat. gṛṇena pṛthvyāḥ padavīm vijighran kroḍa-apadeśaḥ svayam adhvarāṅgaḥ gṛṇena pṛthvyāḥ padavīm vijighran kroḍa-apadeśaḥ svayam adhvarāṅgaḥ karāla-daṁṣṭro akarāla-dṛgbhyām udvīkṣya viprān gṛṇato viṣatkam ghrāṇena pṛthvyāḥ padavīṁ vijighran kroḍa-apadeśaḥ svayam adhvarāṅgaḥ karāla-daṁṣṭro akarāla-dṛgbhyām udvīkṣya viprān gṛṇato viṣatkam ghrāṇena pṛthvyāḥ padavīṁ vijighran kroḍa-apadeśaḥ svayam adhvarāṅgaḥ karāla-daṁṣṭro akarāla-dṛgbhyām udvīkṣya viprān gṛṇato viṣatkam. Mataji's. ghrāṇena pṛthvyāḥ padavīṁ vijighran kroḍa-apadeśaḥ svayam adhvarāṅgaḥ karāla-daṁṣṭro akarāla-dṛgbhyām udvīkṣya viprān gṛṇato viṣatkam ghrāṇena pṛthvyāḥ padavīṁ vijighran kroḍa-apadeśaḥ svayam adhvarāṅgaḥ karāla-daṁṣṭro akarāla-dṛgbhyām udvīkṣya viprān gṛṇato viṣatkam ghrāṇena pṛthvyāḥ padavīṁ vijighran kroḍa-apadeśaḥ svayam adhvarāṅgaḥ karāla-daṁṣṭro akarāla-dṛgbhyām udvīkṣya viprān gṛṇato viṣatkam ghrāṇena, by smelling, pṛthvyāḥ, of the earth, padavīm, situation, vijighran, searching after the earth, kroḍa-apadeśaḥ, assuming the body of a hog, svayam, personally, adhvara, transcendental, aṅgaḥ, body, karāla, fearful, daṁṣṭraḥ, teeth or tusks, api, in spite of, akarāla, not fearful, dṛgbhyām, by his glance, udvīkṣya, glancing over, viprān, all the brāhmaṇa devotees, gṛṇataḥ, who were engaged in prayers, aviśat, entered, come, the water. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. He was personally the Supreme Lord Viṣṇu and was therefore transcendental, yet because he had the body of a hog, he searched after the earth by smell. His tusks were fearful, and he glanced over the devotee-brāhmaṇas engaged in offering prayers. Thus he entered the water. Purport. We should always remember that although the body of a hog is material, the hog form of the Lord is not was not materially contaminated. It is not possible for an earthly hog to assume a gigantic form spreading throughout the sky, beginning from the Satyaloka. His body is always transcendental in all circumstances. Therefore, the assumption of the form of a boar is only his pastime. His body is all Vedas, or transcendental. But since he had assumed the form of a boar, he began to search out the earth by smelling, just like a hog. The Lord can perfectly play the part of any living entity. The gigantic feature of the boar was certainly very fearful for all non-devotees, but to the pure devotees of the Lord, he was not at all fearful. On the contrary, he was so pleasingly glancing upon his devotees that all of them felt transcendental happiness. Om Ajnana-timirandasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshura-militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopistam Sthapitam Yena Bhutare Svayam Rupa Karamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Adhvara Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagradatam Sahagana Raganatam Vidam Tam Sajivam Sadhvitam Savadutam Parirana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vashan Kanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dhinabando Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Rata Kanta Namostite Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Varshabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyas Chakripa Sundibhya Patitanam Pavane Pyo Vaishnavi Pyo Namo Namaha Namo Om Viṣṇu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Putale Srimati Bhakti Vikasa Swaminiti Namane Namo Om Viṣṇu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Putale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavari Paschacharya Shatarani Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivedanta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare ghrāṇena pṛthvyāḥ padavīṁ vijighran kroḍa-apadeśaḥ svayam adhvarāṅgaḥ karāla-daṁṣṭro akarāla-dṛgbhyām udvīkṣya viprān gṛṇato viśat. He was personally the Supreme Lord Viṣṇu and was therefore transcendental, yet because he had the body of a hog, he searched after the earth by smell. His tusks were fearful, and he glanced over the devotee-brāhmaṇas engaged in offering prayers. Thus he entered the water. So we see here emphasis on Lord Varaha appearing personally. Of course, the understanding is that the Lord is ever-present, but this emphasis is placed specifically on him appearing personally before the devotee-brāhmaṇas, before he dives into the water. And he does all this, of course, to achieve multiple goals, but specifically, as is stated in Bhagavad Gita, he does so to annihilate the miscreants and, of course, bring pleasure to his devotees and protect his devotees above all else. So we see that is stated multiple times, that there's gradations even in realization of the absolute truth, ranging from Brahman to Paramatma to Bhagavan, of course. And when one fails to recognize Bhagavan and realize the personal feature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then they miss the chance to understand that when the Lord actually assumes these forms, that he's present. And this is a big thing that a lot of people miss, specifically the Mayavadis, as Prabhupada hammers on them so many times. So as a result of incomplete knowledge comes the inability to completely appreciate the form of the Lord. So we see here especially that leading up until this point, Lord Brahma is once again perplexed, as has been the theme throughout the creation, even though he's, of course, recognized as being the most intelligent and supermost being in the material creation. Still, he's again perplexed, time after time, and this is another time we see Swayambhuv and his wife have just been created, and they ask for what is their position. He tells them that by protecting the living entities in the material creation, this is how he will essentially achieve the mercy of the Lord. To which Swayambhuv essentially asks, well, if I'm to do this, can we get the earth out of the depths of the ocean first? Because it's fallen down there. So, of course, Lord Brahma, he ultimately realizes always, because he's a pure devotee, that everything that happens is happening as a result of the will of the Supreme Lord. So there's no chance by which this happens. But he contemplates and he wonders. Let me pull up specifically where it says, Lord Brahma thought, this is text 17, you don't have to pull it up, I'll just read. While I have been engaged in the process of creation, the earth has been inundated by a deluge and has gone down into the depths of the ocean. What can we do? What can we do who are engaged in this matter of creation? it is best to let the Almighty Lord direct us. And then, of course, the next verse, O sinless Vidura, all of a sudden, while Lord Brahma was engaged in thinking, a small form of a boar came out of his nostrils. So upon this happening, we see that there is deliberation between the sages. It's specifically described that they're arguing, and they're trying to ascertain, where does this boar come from? What is his identity? It's not that there's just blind and immediate acceptance that this is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So there's one thing we can especially recognize here is the importance of recognizing the Supreme Lord, but more than anything, consulting those who are properly situated before we actually arrive at conclusions, which is very important. Not just especially, even in the material sphere, but what to speak of spiritually. We shouldn't proceed, of course, in ignorance on our own whims. And because people tend to do that, then this gives way for so many bogus gurus and incarnations of God, which we've seen people essentially fall victim to, because there's not proper knowledge and there's not proper you could say sangha ultimately, and qualified individuals who are able to recognize this. And when that's lost, then of course people are misled. So we see that the sages, they deliberate and they recognize this is the Supreme Lord, and then before they offer these prayers up to him. Of course, a little bit later on in the chapter is detailed that, of course, after Lord Varaha assumes this bluish form, then of course they recognize, oh, this is none other than Viṣṇu. But even just from hearing the tumultuous roar which came from Lord Varaha, they got to understand that this was the all-auspicious transcendental sound which comes from none other than the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. And at this point, there's also this recognition. This is none other than the Supreme Lord. So it's quite bewildering that, at least for the non-devotees, as Prabhupada says, that even though he's personally the Supreme Lord, his body is always transcendental. He still has the body of a hog, however, and therefore he also plays that part accordingly. Because all things rest in the Supreme Lord and all things come from him, he can bring out and exhibit any quality that of which he wants to at any point in time. And so he assumes this form, and then he plays as though he is a hog, which is, this is what it means essentially to be the original person in whom all things rest. This is Adi Purusha. And when we miss this is when the living entity in illusion, or without proper knowledge, begins to think that quality in the exhibition of this activity is a result of conditioning. Or also just the same way that we're forced to act in some manner. Oh, Lord Varaha is also being forced to act in this manner and all, but this is actually completely and totally false. The chief difference or misconception, or a dangerous misconception, we could say, is thinking that the jiva's forgetful nature is on par with the Supreme Lord forgetting in pursuit of actually just enacting pastimes and enjoying. This is one of the most dangerous things. We see that the living entity is ultimately put under the control of Maya for lack of submission to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then, of course, falsely identifies with the body, which is the beginning of all material existence. We see that this is described previously in chapter 12, at the beginning of chapter 12, where it's described that Lord Brahma is creating the Nishan engagements, which I believe there are 4 in number, and one of the first ones is this false identification. Because if there's not forgetfulness, then there can't be existence within this material world, because there has this. One of the interesting examples that comes up, I guess, in this connection is when Lord Brahma is creating the material world, he's setting forth the conditions before he actually creates the forms and the bodies that of which the living entities assume, by which they'll be essentially constrained and controlled by these conditions. It's just like, I don't have this I looked into programming in university, and I'm glad I didn't obviously try to go through with it because it's well above my level of intelligence. But to my understanding, like there's you lay forth you lay out all the conditions and the constraints, and then you proceed with actually creating like what people will see on the front end. You do the back end, essentially programming on the first, and then you do what's seen on the front end. Like there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes, you could say, for a video game, or just like for a simple website even. There's all these different functions and lines of code. And you lay that out first, and then you start to do the design. So similarly, we see that the material creation is ultimately approached in a similar manner, you could say. And this is the means by which the jiva is conditioned and has this position of forgetfulness. And forgetfulness is one thing that's talked about generally, broadly speaking, we could say in two senses, in two different senses in Prabhupada's books. We have the forgetfulness that comes about as a result of just the cyclical progression of time. As we go into Kali Yuga and progress deeper into that, it's understood that our intelligence becomes shorter, our memory becomes shorter, and of course with this piety goes down. And so many other things. And so with that increases this forgetfulness. And then we also just had the forgetfulness, which is more of what I'm relating here, the forgetfulness of our eternal position of servitude to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the important point is understanding that we forget and we're forced to act under Maya. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is always enjoying by means of his internal potency, Yoga Maya. And never forgets that. It's not that he ever forgets that he's God, because it then defeats the purpose of him actually being Bhagavan. So, two different things. We're not in this material world to just enact pastimes. We're here suffering because we tried to act like God, which is something that's driven home time after time in Prabhupada's books. I wanted to, can you pull up Bhagavatam, chapter 12, text 2. Third canto. So it's his previous chapter. So sasar jagre dha tamistram atha tamistram madikrit moha moham cha mohang cha tamash cha jnana vrittayaha. Brahma first created the Neshan engagements like self-deception, the sense of death, anger after frustration, the sense of false ownership, and the illusory bodily conception or forgetfulness of one's identity. So it reads in the purport, before the factual creation of the living entities and different varieties of species, the conditions under which a living being in the material world has to live, were created by Brahma. Unless a living entity forgets his real identity, it is impossible for him to live in the material conditions of life. Therefore, the first condition of material existence is forgetfulness of one's identity. And by forgetting one's real identity, one is sure to be afraid of death, although a pure living soul is deathless and birthless. This is one of the first couple of things, of course, that's taught in Bhagavad Gita when Krishna is explaining to Arjuna that those who are learned never lament for the death of the body, because of course, he gives a slew of reasons, but one of the first ones being that the soul cannot be cut, slain, or burned, or affected by any sort of material element. This false identification with material nature is the cause of false ownership of things which are offered by the arrangement of superior control. So, again, the chief understanding we should always walk away with is that our conditioning is forced upon us, and we are forced to act, and it is nothing like the acting of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In this connection, you can also pull up Bhagavad Gita, chapter 5, text 14, where Krishna is giving the difference between the embodied soul and spirit. Forgive me. Anyways, I'll just read it if you have it up. Nakartvam nakarmani lokasya sarjati prabhu na karma phala samyogam swabhavastha pravartate. The embodied spirit, master of the city of his body, does not create activities, nor does he induce people to act, nor does he create the fruits of action. All this is enacted by the modes of material nature. And go on to text 15. Nadate kasyachit papam nachaiva sukratam vibhuhu agyane navritam jnanam tena muhyanti jantavaha. Nor does the Supreme Lord assume anyone's sinful or pious activities. Embodied beings, however, are bewildered because of their ignorance which covers their real knowledge. So we see that. Of course, Krishna is completely and totally above the acts and laws of karma, whereas we are completely and totally subject to that, unfortunately, within the material world. You can also pull up 15.9, still in Bhagavad Gita. This gives the particular type of embodiment, understanding that one achieves, well, I'll just read, Shotram chakshuf sparshanam cha, rasanam ghrāṇam eva cha, adhishtaya manaschayam, vishtayan upasevate. The living entity, thus taking another gross body, obtains a certain type of ear, eye, tongue, nose, and sense of touch, which are grouped about the mind. He thus enjoys a particular set of sense objects. So, of course, I was talking about this with Kalki Prabhu the other day. It's, especially when you go through Gita, at least, all these points about us being conditioned and us having been so forgetful of this eternal position for so long that we don't know how to act properly in this position of servitude. It's like philosophically, and at least like we can wrap our heads around it. But then when you get to Bhagavatam, especially in the later chapters of the third canto, when Lord Kapilādeva is speaking to his mother, to Devahuti, and he's giving, specifically in the chapter about the movements of the living entities, where he's detailing how the living entity goes from body to body to body. It really helps drive the point home, at least. I just reached fourth canto, so this point was quite interesting to me, because of course we the conception, at least that I had before, or the ideas that I grew up on surrounding suffering, and especially life after death, but more specifically in hell, it's not nearly as complete as what the Bhagavatam gives, and it's terrifyingly in great detail. You could pull up, Canto 3, Chapter 30, Text 29. He's essentially described how we don't just, it's not that you just get a body after having your desires to carry out, but even these desires and the suffering that we go through, there's practice and conditioning before you even achieve that position. Atraiva narakah swarga iti matas prachakshate ya yatana vainarakyas taihapyu palakshate palakshitaha. Forgive me. Lord Kapila continued, "My dear mother, it is sometimes said that we experience hell or heaven on this planet, for hellish punishments are sometimes visible on this planet also." You can read I want to go to the purport specifically. Sometimes unbelievers do not accept these statements. Excuse me, sorry. Sometimes unbelievers do not accept these statements of Scripture regarding hell. They disregard such authorized descriptions. Lord Kapila therefore confirms them by saying that these hellish conditions are also visible on this planet. It is not that they are only on the planet where Yamaraj lives. On the planet of Yamaraj, the sinful man is given the chance to practice living in the hellish conditions which he will have to endure in the next life, and then he is given a chance to take birth on another planet to continue his hellish life. Excuse me. For example, if a man is to be punished to remain in hell and eat stool and urine, it's a nice combo, then first of all, he practices such habits on the planet of Yamaraj, and then he is given a particular type of body, that of a hog, so that he can eat stool and think that he is enjoying life. It is stated previously that in any hellish condition, the conditioned soul thinks that he is happy. Otherwise, it would not be possible for him to suffer hellish life. So it's amazing, not, of course, in like a sense like this is necessarily something you rejoice upon hearing, but it is, it's amazing that that conditioning precedes the type of body that one will receive. And we see this, of course, driven home here. The fact that you're having to practice before you actually get a chance to suffer, but then you're thinking you're enjoying still, is it speaks to the strength, more specifically, of Mahamaya. Later on, I believe it's or maybe it's in the same chapter. No, I think it's the next chapter. The jiva who's fortunate enough to have remembrance of Krishna while he's in the womb and is suffering so much. These prayers, let's pull it up on my phone. I want to say it's chapter 32, text 7, I believe. It reads, Jantaro vacha tasyopasanam avitam jagaditjayata nana tanur bhuvicha lachchara nara vindams so ham vrajami sharanam yakuto bhayang me and yene darshi gatira darshasato na rupa. This yene darshi gatira darshasato na rupa. The jiva specifically recognizes that we take on these conditions of life, which is befitting of our impious activities. You're having trouble finding it? Chapter 32. Try text 7. That wasn't it? Huh. It's fine. No, I don't think it. Maybe you can go to the index. There's a couple more prayers that were further. I'm sorry. I should have wrote down the direct reference. Keep going. It begins with the human soul, the living entity praise. No. All right, forget about it. Don't worry about it. The main point essentially is the living entity. I remember I was reading this. I was like, how is it that before one is even coming out of the womb, they're able to compose these prayers? And Prabhupada makes a point that essentially Krishna can give the intelligence to anybody to be able to compose such. And of course, one is fortunate. They recognize their position. They pray to Krishna to not have this forgetfulness. Even once, more than anything, they actually pray not to leave the womb. And of course, in this connection, it speaks a little bit about how Shukadev Goswami, we understand he spent, I believe it was 15 years in his mother's womb, and then the minute he came out, he ran away. It's described that the minute one is born into this world, Maya immediately covers them over, and they're cared for, at least on the bodily platform, by people who have also forgotten their position and then also similarly don't know how to actually take care of them. And they're just forced to accept all this service that which they try to render them, because they're crying, they're writhing, they're in pain, and it's generally the conception is that, of course, the mother knows more than anybody else the needs of the child, but specifically, if she's not spiritually situated, then actually they don't, which is quite unfortunate. And Bhagavatam is giving that explanation in great detail. Oh, there it is. Okay, you found it. If you can go up to the Sanskrit, let me see. Go back some. Go back 2 verses, please. 2 more. Nope, okay, just 1. There you go, yeah. Yeah, so again, the last line specifically detailing if you could go down, not to the translation. Again, we take this position, and one is properly situated. They approach the Supreme Personality for shelter because the same suffering condition also comes from him as well. So again, understanding this all-powerful personality of Godhead, it's quite important. So we see especially in the other reference I pulled up regarding how one practices on the planet of Yamaraj before then going on to their next condition of life. Specifically, is detailed for that of a hog. So again, that, like, more than anything, giving very clear understanding that we see here in today's verse about the form of Lord Varaha, again, is not material by any means. So really driving that point home. It's described, sorry, I should have had this page, that the of course, he searches after the earth by smell. His tusks are fearful, specifically for the non-devotees, and he glanced over the devotee-brāhmaṇas engaged in offering prayers. He thus entered the water. So one point that is also made is not, at least not directly in this purport, but I should have found a reference for this, but we should endeavor not just to see Krishna, or see the form of the Lord, but to be qualified to be seen by the Lord. Of course, we understand that there's the vijighran form. Krishna so mercifully assumes so that we can take darshan of him on a day-to-day basis. But this Lord's glance, especially in a couple places throughout the Bhagavatam, is described as very sweet, and it brings the devotees great pleasure, of course, upon seeing this. Now, the interesting thing, of course, is that there's a number of people who we see in the various forms of the Lord. They also, you say, achieve the Lord's glance. But again, without that proper recognition of the Supreme Lord in his various forms being there, then one is not actually able to properly relish this. Again, even when given that which is transcendental, and like even in devotional service, we can be given this process and still, with our mundane conceptions, make it a very material process, and then rob ourselves of the opportunity to actually rise above our conditioning. I remember this set of verses I really liked. Sorry to have you pulling this up again. You can go to Canto 3, Chapter 28, Text 31. This is detailing specifically the nature of the Lord's glance. Also being described by Lokapiladev. Is this, what verse is this? 28. Chapter 28. Is this, yeah. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, okay. So you can just go to the word for word. The yogi should contemplate with full devotion the compassionate glance. The compassionate glance is frequently cast by the Lord's eyes, for they soothe the most fearful threefold agonies of his devotees. His glances, accompanied by loving smiles, are full of abundant grace. So it's described, especially that the, I remember, I wasn't going to specifically quote this verse. Go to the Sanskrit. Is this hasam? Yeah. Hasam harera vanatakila lokativra shokashtarsagara vishoshanam atyadharam samohanaya rajitam nijamaya yasta brahmandalam munikarte makaradvajasya. So the face of the Supreme Lord is incredibly pleasing. It's described a yogi should similarly meditate on the most benevolent smile of Lord Sri Hari, a smile which for all those who bowed to him drives away the ocean of tears caused by intense grief. So emphasis on those who bow to him. And those who actually accept that position of submission. Otherwise, it's not the ability to relish that transcendental happiness. The yogi should also meditate on the Lord's arched eyebrows, which are manifested by his internal potency in order to charm the sex god for the good of the sages. I remember it was last year, I believe, vayamad Prabhu gave me this verse. It's quite helpful, especially for dealing with lusty desires. So the Supreme Lord is always ready to bestow his mercy upon his devotees. And that same glance, again, is the whole, as this whole process of Krishna consciousness details, is that change of consciousness, or that proper consciousness has to be there. Otherwise, that same glance can otherwise not yield one the transcendental effect of actually achieving such. Of course, everything connected with the Supreme Lord is glorious, and even the demons who are killed by Krishna, they achieve some sort of liberation, impersonal liberation, but of course we understand that there's higher goals than that, which we are told to strive for. In the example of Queen Kunti, which is, I believe this is in Canto 1, I will talk about it just in summary, so I'm not going to ask you to bring it up. But we see that she approaches, or appreciates, rather, these disturbances that come about and all the reversals that come about for the Pandavas. Because even though the devotee is completely and totally above the three modes of material nature, the point is made by Prabhupada that disturbances will be there, but the devotee doesn't actually suffer as a result of them because they're always thinking of Krishna and they're always associating with him. And because of this, whatever problem does arise, by thinking of Krishna, they're immediately mitigated. And so Queen Kunti recognizes this, and as a result says that, please give me more problems, of course, which is a platform I'm not at all on. I get problems and I start to lament and get mental. So the understanding is, of course, this is such a high level of consciousness that we should strive for. We also similarly see with Prahlad Maharaj that even though his own father, Hiranyakashipu, puts him into so many difficulties and tries to kill him, as detailed, I know this is later in 7th canto, I believe. Obviously, I'm not there yet, but we've heard so many lectures and a lot of times these pastimes are referenced. Of course, an understanding with the understanding being that we should tolerate devotional service, but the main mood of Prahlad Maharaj, especially, is that despite externally having so many problems, he makes the point that I actually have no problems. I'm really just worried for those who have forgotten you, and are essentially not taking shelter of you. So again, it's a point that comes up over and over again, this importance of taking shelter under the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because otherwise there's no means by overcoming this very intricate and strong conditioning that of which we've thrust ourselves into in pursuit of enjoyment. Similarly, in this connection, there's this verse about avajananti mam mudha manushim dhanamashritam. What's the last two lines? Param bhava ajananti. I need the last line, I'm sorry. I always forget the last two. So the the first two lines especially, that fools deride Krishna when he descends in his personal form. But we see obviously here in this pastime that they also deride him when he appears in the form of a boar also. So there's no limits, I guess, if one wants to the means by which they can, to the extent to which we can try to forget Krishna, of course. The symptoms, of course, of us actually, the symptoms that we are conditioned, as we see with Hiranyaksha. Granted, this is pastime. We understand this is Jaya and Vijay coming down as a result of being cursed by the four Kumaras. But one of the symptoms, of course, of being conditioned is this assuming that our own conditioning also extends to others, and they're also subject to that same, we could say, miseries as well. And because of this, then one finds themselves unable to conceive of actually rising above that, which is false. Because obviously we understand that by the process of devotional service, we're given a means to do that. Also, we see that similarly, another symptom of us being conditioned, we can't properly conceive of Lord Varaha being actually transcendental. This is, I believe, I'm trying to think of the term. I don't know the Sanskrit, but I know, I believe it's the Mayavadis who, this is like Dadra Narayan or poor Narayan. They think that Daridra So again, this misconception that actually we're all God, I've just forgotten. And so therefore, all the situations and whatnot that I'm having forced upon me are actually just my own pastime. Again, thinking that this conditioning extends to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, when rather it's described in I think it's a couple purports again, that all illusion is in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because again, all things originate from him, but he can still be the source of these things and simultaneously not be subject to them. Otherwise, again, it defeats the purpose of him having that position as Bhagavan. One thing especially that stood out to me in this text, we see that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his tusks are fearful. More specifically, the activity, he has the body of a hog, he searches after the earth by smell, his tusks are fearful, and he glances over the earth, over the devotee-brāhmaṇas engaged in offering prayers. I mean, of course, I haven't had personal experience with a boar, but I'd probably be terrified just seeing one of normal size, what to speak of one that stretches across the three worlds. Of course, if we don't have the proper knowledge, naturally one is, of course, going to be pretty fearful. I mean, this sounds pretty logical, actually. But again, just missing that chief point that this is the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself, and by asserting that mundane conception on that, then we throw ourselves deeper into illusion. So again, it's a dangerous thing. I'm not gonna go on beyond that. That's all I have. So I'll go ahead and open up for comments, questions, chastisements, corrections, if there are any. Okay. Hold up.
I guess a question I have is, you mentioned earlier in the class that Krishna doesn't forget that he's God, but you see in the Damodar Leela that he's like legitimately scared of Mother Yashoda.
Right.
But that is like that pastime is a source of great bliss for the devotees, and even for Krishna, to have that relationship with Mother Yashoda, of being fearful of her, even though he's God. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to ask you, like, just that point of he never forgets he's God, but then you see your instances he actually does.
Yeah, it's bewildering, of course. I wish I probably should have found more directly in this connection, but I know that Prabhupada makes the point that even though externally it seems like this, if Krishna always just pretty much one-shotted every single demon that came about immediately, and there was no activities that took place in between that kind of just facilitated that feeling, that evoked that feeling for the devotee. He would the pastimes wouldn't be as sweet, I guess. I mean, of course, Krishna doesn't actually have to personally go and kill any of the demons, but he does, of course, and it's beneficial for obviously the devotees, but even the demons as well. He doesn't have to personally assume that form. He could just do it from anywhere, but he does again. So it's like that. I mean, I'm not so. I haven't. Much of the Bhagavatam, of course, as we understand, is reading about the devotees of Krishna, and the pastimes tend to, at least before we get really, really deep into more of that, of course, it comes later, and I haven't gotten so deep into that part of the Bhagavatam yet, but I know at least that understanding is there, that the point, it externally looks like he's forgetting this, but of course he's not. So I mean, it's just kind of one of those bewildering things you just kind of have to understand, more or less. I mean, I'm sure there's a deeper explanation if somebody wants to expound on that more, but it's at least is a basic principle that the Prabhupada has made, that there's not, God cannot possibly forget his position of supremacy. So that's all I can really contribute to that matter. Is there anybody else? Okay, women.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
sorry.
mean, even like this past time with Agasura, it seems like I remember reading that Krishna, he gets bewildered because he sees his friends going to the mouth of the snake, and then it describes that then he remembers that, okay, I can go and I can kill the snake. So it seems like he allows his Yogamaya potency to overcome him.
Of course.
And for his enjoyment, but then he also has the ability sometimes to snap out of it.
All the time.
Based on that past.
And the key word, like you said, is allows.
Yeah.
So it's never like.
It's not sometimes, all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the
He
point
always
is,
has the ability.
well, not, of course he always has the ability. The point is that he gets the pleasure of allowing his Yogamaya's potency to
Yeah,
cover
but he's
him.
always in control.
Yeah.
So perhaps you could, I'm sorry to ask a question on the Vyasa-san, but if you could maybe contribute a better explanation of that.
That's it.
It's just,
It's simple, that's all. He's always in control. When he wants to forget, he forgets, but when he wants to end the forgetfulness, it ends.
Yeah.
It's over.
Yeah. But it seems like
That's
also
all.
when,
Point is he's enjoying. So
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was-
The cowboy's going to the mouth of the snake. What am I going to enjoy now?
yeah,
So now I gotta do my thing.
right.
So that's the point. That he's gotta.
Well, he gets his most enjoyment when he seems like when he's forgetting, that's when it seems like he gets the most enjoyment. Because like you're saying,
The
like,
point is he's in control.
yeah, oh, he's always going to be in control, but
Of Yogamaya.
yeah, he allows himself to be forget.
of course. All right, so that's that. Any other questions from the men?
One thing about the boar, the hog, it's a very versatile animal. It can survive in diverse habitats, and it's actually an intelligent animal in the sense of getting its way and surviving. They're known to be invasive species of feral hogs that have been very hard to deal with. They have an ability to, they're also extremely resistant, and they have great memory. So if they see themselves being trapped in a certain way, then they purposefully avoid all the traps laid out for them because they remember. And then what's even amazing when I was doing some research about feral hogs, because I was trying to see what are invasive species for farms and things like this. And these feral hogs, when a great number of them are caught and just a few escape, that's one of the worst things that can happen, because the few that escape develop the extreme ability to somehow proliferate like crazy, much higher reproduction capacity than a normal feral hog. This is like researched. They produce twice and thrice as more in order to increase their population like fervently. So they're actually very tough species that survive. So why am I saying all this? Because it's very suitable that the Supreme Lord accepted such a form to go and find the earth. Because in some ways, the hog is almost practically undefeatable. It's quite a tough species to deal with. And Supreme Lord enjoyed that and thwarted Hiranyaksha's plans. And yeah, they have a great sense of smell. This big nose. So they can smell out the earth and dig up whatever they want from underneath.
It's very far out. I didn't know all that. I've heard, boars, or I guess hogs and pigs aren't like, well, I guess hogs and, I'm trying to think, pigs aren't like,
All boars and hogs are pigs, but all pigs are not necessarily boars and hogs. So they all fall under one umbrella. Does it make sense?
yeah. Okay. Anybody else? Questions? All right, Mataji's. Okay. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.